Hello everyone, welcome back once again to my channel. This is Ajay. So today we are going to learn the concept of local and global variables in Python. Now there are many students around who are finding it a bit confusing how exactly local and global variable works in Python. So let us understand. So before we start, there is a sample code in front of you. There is a function called as test. And so now let us understand some basic things that in Python we never declare a variable. We always define a variable. So there is a variable called as I in front of you. So the value that I've assigned is 6. So I is an integer variable. Since I've assigned an integer value, so I will become an integer variable. But if I try to assign a value as 6.5, so I will be a floating variable. And then if I try to assign a string, so in that case I will become a string variable. So we never declare a variable, we kind of define a variable. Now I will do something. I will print a value, print I, that is before the defining the variable, and I will bring the value back to 6. Now this is obviously an error because we are trying to print the value of I, and after that we are creating the variable I. So first we will run the code and see the output, what the output is. So we will just run this code now, and there you go. We have the error that is name I is not defined. This is an obvious error because the variable was being created at the next line, and before that we are trying to print I. Now the reason that I have given this example is because it is going to help us to understand how a local and global variable works in Python. So now we will try to understand what is a local variable and a global variable. There is a function called as test, and you can see there is a variable called as I is equal to 2 inside the function. And I'll just remove this thing. I'll remove the error. Now there is a variable I is equal to 6. Now this variable that is in the main program is the global variable. And then I'm giving a call to the function test. Inside the function, I is equal to 2. So what will happen? The interpreter will create a new variable, that is I is equal to 2. So this will be a local variable for the function test. So what will happen? This variable of test and the main and the global variable I, that is of the main program, these are two different variables. Although the name is same, but these are two different variables. That is the basic thing to understand. So I is equal to 6 and I is equal to 2. Again I repeat, these are two different variables. So I is equal to 2 is the local variable for test, and I is equal to 6. This is a global variable. Every variable that will be declared under the main, that is defined under the main, in the main program, will be a global variable. So this is the concept. So what we will do, we will run the code now, and we will try to we'll see the output. So it will definitely print the value of I in the test, and outside it will print in the main program, it will print I, that is 6, because these are two different variables. So we will run the code now and see the output. So there it is, the output is 2 and 6. So these are two different variables, so we had this output. Now let us do something. I will just remove this line of code and I will simply keep print I. Now you might think that we will get an error since we are trying to print the value, the variable I in the test, but there is no variable I in the function test. So if you see the output, we didn't had any error. We had the output 6 6. Now this is because we are trying, when the interpreter tries to print the I in the test function, and so it will try to find the local variable I. Since there is no local variable I, so what it does is it will try to find the variable I in the global area, that is in the main program. So in main program we have the variable I and the value is 6. So what it will do is it will access this value, it will take this value and it will print. So we have accessed the global variable. But please understand that there are only two ways by which we can access the global variable. The first is there are two instances that we can access. The first is for printing the variable, and second for accessing the value of the variable. So we will understand this. Now first we are printing the variable I. So it has accessed the global variable. Now what we will do is I'll show an example how to access the value of the variable. For example, if I type something like if I is equal to 6. Now this is an example by which I'm trying to access the value of I. Now over here the value of I is 6. So it will access the global variable since there is no local variable, and then it will print the value I. So these are the two ways. This is an example where I'm trying to access the value of I, and the print I is where I'm trying to print the variable I. So these are the two ways I can access the global variable. So the output is 6 as usual. It's quite obvious. Now let us do something. I will change the code. I will try to change the code now. So this is the variable I, that is I'm trying to access. So if I do something like I is equal to 2, now what will happen? We'll run the code and we had an error. Now why we got this error? Now let us understand. Now this was the example that I told before at the beginning of the tutorial. I told you that if you try to print the variable and then you're trying to define the variable, then you'll get an error. So this is the same situation where we are trying to access the value of I. The interpreter, what it is understanding is we are trying to access the variable I, and we are trying to print it, and after that we are defining the variable I. So this is what the interpreter takes. This is how interpreter is understanding it. So that is the reason we got error for this, and this is the example in the beginning of the tutorial. That is why I took that example, that if you try to print any variable before creating it, so definitely it will give an error. So this is a very important part to understand. So what we have to do is, now I'll just make some changes in the code. So this is the I'm trying to access the variable, and I'm trying to create the variable. So that is the reason I got the error. So you can just go through it, take your time, and now I will change. If I do something like I is equal to 2 before the if statement, now what will happen? In this case, the test function will get a local variable I is equal to 2. Now this I under the test and the I which is in the main, that is a global variable, will be two different variables. Now let us take another example. Now if I want to manipulate the variable I, so in that case I have to use a keyword called as global. So global I. Now what will happen is, in this case I will access the global variable, and at the same time I can change the variable, the value of the variable. As I said, if I don't use this, I can only access the value or print the value. Now if I do something like I is equal to 2, and then if I say if I'm printing the value I, so what will happen over here is the interpreter will directly access the global variable, that is the value is 6. So it will access the same value, and then I will change the value. Now over here the variable I inside the test and the variable I, that is the global variable inside the main, they are the same variables. These two variables are exactly the same. So if I try to change the value inside the test, so the value will get changed. You can say the value of I is 6, and now I'm changing it to 2. So the value will get changed. So if I want to change the value of a global variable, then I have to use the global keyword. Otherwise, I can only print the value and access the value. So you can see the output 2 and 2. Why? Is because we have changed the value inside the test, that is I is equal to 2. So the value of the global variable got changed. So I will do some changes now in the code, and if I try to do it again as I is equal to 2, over here what happens is this I and the I is equal to 2, that is under the test, and I is equal to 6 are different variables. And if I am trying to only print the variable, so what will happen? In this case there is no local variable, so the interpreter will take the global value and it will print. Since I am only trying to print, so this is also a way of accessing the global variable, but I cannot change the value of the variable. I cannot manipulate the variable. So this is a very important part to understand. So then I have to use if I want to change the variable, the value of the variable, I have to use the keyword global. Now let us take one list. I've taken a list over here, and since it's a global variable, I can access that list inside the test, and I can also perform all the operations that I can add a number into the list, and then I can print the list. I can do all the operations. So there it is, and I will just run the code and see whether we are getting the output or not. So there we go, we got the output. That is the first is the list, and then 6 and 6. So there is no error since I can access the list. But if I try to do something, if I try to create a list over here, L is equal to an empty list. Now I'm trying to create a list, and there we go. Again, we had the same error, that is local variable L referenced before assignment. So why? Because the interpreter is understanding that I'm creating the list, and before that only I'm trying to perform some operations. I'm trying to print the variable, and after that I'm trying to create the list. That is the reason I got the error. So, but if I want to change this, I can use the global keyword, and after that I can directly access the global variable, and also I can change the variable. So this is how the entire thing is working. So this is, I hope the concept of local and global variable is very much clear to you. If it is not, just rewind it, go through it once again, and I'm pretty sure it will be very much clear to you. So if you have liked my video, do subscribe to my channel. There is a subscribe button in front of you. Click it right away, and after that click on the bell icon so that you can get the regular notifications of my videos. Bye for now.